Hey guys, I'm back, but not really. I mean, I don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but I'm going to make a few videos for Fates, and I'm not gonna make a huge bunch of excuses for you because I know there are lots of excuses actually, but nah, it's not worth it. You know what's wrong. I'm busy. That's what it is. I've been busy. I didn't die, if that's what you're wondering. I'm just busy. So, and let's get right to the point. Let's start talking about Fire Emblem Fates, also known as Fire Emblem If, and that's something I want to talk about at some point because the name in Japanese actually indicates some really interesting stuff based on the story that I know, but I haven't actually played the game yet because my copy is gonna come like a week later, some shit like that. So I'm not going to be making guides for a while, but I do want to do that eventually. And I don't know if I'm going to have skits. I don't know if I'm going to have like fancy stuff for it, but I do plan on making some character guides, hopefully. So let's get right into it. So the main topic of today's video, though, is not an update video really so much as I wanted to talk about the new mechanic in Fates, specifically the removal of the durability system. Durability in Fire Emblem Fates does not exist at all. It's just not a thing that is in the game. Weapon durability has been a thing for the entire Fire Emblem franchise as far as I know. There was only one other game in the series not using that, and it was Fire Emblem Guided, which was a weird game that I've never played personally. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but now, at first, my initial reaction to this was that of many hardcore fans, and what the heck? Why would you take out this mechanic? It's a core part of the series. Now you're just like making it too easy. This game's gonna be too easy for you know, advanced players. It's not gonna be interesting enough. And I'm like, why would you do this to us? But as I looked into it more, I'm starting to think that this was actually a really, really good thing. And I want to kind of tell you my thought process on this. The first few games that came out in America, the Game Boy Advance games, had 3 different things that all went into your decision-making process as to which weapon you want to use. And this made it a very complex and, to be honest, good system. But it also led to some significant unbalances and inherent problems. So let's talk about that really quick. It had durability, as we're used to. It also had what I want to talk about, like weapon stats, like the relative accuracy versus damage of a weapon, and that decision, you know, do you need the accuracy, do you need the damage, that was kind of always a big factor in Fire Emblem, as well as, you know, do I have enough uses of this weapon to afford to spend it on this enemy. But it also had a third feature, and that was the weight of the weapon. And some of you may remember this, but for those of you who don't know, all weapons had a specific weight. And on top of that, all characters had a specific constitution, and that's a score that is no longer used in recent Fire Emblem games. But constitution was a score that basically only was used for the purposes of determining whether or not you could wield that weapon appropriately. So if your constitution was equal to or greater than the weight of the weapon, you're fine. But if it's not, for every point it is less, your constitution is less than the weight, you get your speed reduced by 1. So it's a big complicated system that basically just equates to, if you're not bulky enough, you can't use the big axe or whatnot, right? And that's usually how it worked. You know, big silver axes had the big actually steel, I think, had the biggest weight. You get the idea. So this was weird because it inherently made certain characters better than others just by their default constitution score, which never changes, by the way, unless you promote the unit, in which case they get a small boost to constitution usually. And there's a certain item in the game, usually one of them, that increases it by 2. But other than that, there's no change in your constitution. So certain characters just were inherently better for having a higher constitution. Now, that's one of the biggest problems I had with the system, but all in all, I don't think it was a terrible system. It gave it a lot of depth as to which weapon you use, because you had to compare, can I afford to use this weapon? Am I going to run out of uses? You also had to think about, is this going to do enough damage? Is this going to be accurate enough? And lastly, you also had to consider whether or not this is going to weigh you down enough so that you could double attack, or maybe they would double attack you. Some of those like steel lances and stuff were so heavy that Pegasus Knights, which had terribly low constitutions, would be weighed down by like 7 or 8 speed, which is just unfathomably bad. It's so bad, especially in the old days where, you know, stats didn't go up as high as they do in Awakening. So it was really important to keep an eye on all 3 of these attributes when choosing which weapon to use, and it made it a really deep system, and I liked it a lot. But it was complicated, and for this day and age, I just don't think it would fit very well anymore. Now, Fire Emblem moved away from that, as we all know. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance changed the Constitution stat to the Strength stat. Now, to explain what I mean, they still had weight on weapons, but whether or not you could wield them effectively was not based on an arbitrary Constitution stat, but on your Strength stat, which could be increased. This was weird, though, because after a certain point in the game, it was never a problem. You never, ever got weighed down by anything unless you were like the weakest unit in the whole game, and really, there weren't that many of those. Path of Radiance was a fairly well-balanced game. The only problem that sometimes arose was when sometimes a tome was too heavy for a magic user to use, because, you know, you scale off of magic and not strength, and they had both stats for the first time separately for them. Before that, it was magic or strength, depending on the character. So, this was an interesting idea. It didn't really work out because there was no, you know, important like gameplay functionalities because of it. Because, like I said, it just becomes irrelevant after like chapter 10 or something like that. Besides that, they just completely moved away from. After that, Radiant Dawn, I don't believe even had weight anymore. And Awakening certainly didn't. So they just decided to give up on the whole fast of it, which just left the durability and the difference between accuracy and damage. Now, I think this was an okay system, but it felt lacking in depth to me compared to the old system of the Game Boy Advance games. It's not enough to like condemn every game afterwards or anything stupid like that, but I did enjoy the complexity of it before, and it felt a little less interesting. Now, when I heard what they were doing in Fates, where they were removing another facet of it, I thought, what? No, you can't do this to us. It can't become this simple. Like, I was really frustrated, but I looked at it more, and I have to say, this could possibly be the best system for weapon choices in the whole series. The part that makes this cool is not the removal of durability, although I do think that the removal of durability is kind of a good thing overall, but I'll talk about that in a bit. The thing that I'm really excited about is the fact that they're making the weapons each really unique and making you really think about which one you want to use at any given time. You know, they took away all the other things you had to think about and just focused really hard on the individual weapon statistics. Now bronze weapons are really accurate, but they do very little damage. Steel weapons do a lot of damage, but they once again provide a penalty to your speed, but it's like a set penalty, not based on your own constitution or anything like that. They also, I believe, give a higher chance to crit, so there's lots of like little things you have to weigh in each decision, like, should I use this one that gives me a higher chance to crit, this one that speeds me up, this one that slows me down? You know, more accurate, less accurate, and there's a lot of different aspects to it, and because of that, I think it's probably the most interesting, because now you have all these different things to think about in each and every combat situation. You have lots of options, instead of just saying, can I kill him with this iron sword? No, therefore use steel sword, you know? Like, it's better to have to weigh the consequences of each action. If using the steel sword makes it so you can't double attack them, it's going to be a really bad idea in most cases. But if the steel sword lets you one-shot the enemy without them retaliating, hey, it's worth it, probably. Except maybe the accuracy isn't as good enough, and you might miss. That's a risk you might have to take. It's interesting. It's interesting, and that's what I'm happy about. The last little point I wanted to touch on was the fact that legendary weapons are bullshit. In most Fire Emblem games, you get these ridiculously powerful weapons of like grandiose scale. They're sometimes given to you throughout the course of the game, like in Fire Emblem 6, the one with Roy in it. Sometimes they're given to you kind of all at once, but one way or another, you often get these very powerful legendary weapons, usually associated with some royal family or another, or some great hero of legend. and you're expected to be able to wield these weapons, but the reality is most of them have so few uses that you can't. Like, the legendary weapons in Fire Emblem 6, for example, it's one of the Game Boy Advance games, but it came out only in Japan, have 20 uses each. 20. That's enough for like one level, and then they're broken. These are weapons that have lasted 1,000 years. They have lasted 1,000 years. They have been passed down from time immemorial, and they break after like 5 minutes. What the fuck? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense logically, and it doesn't really make sense from a game perspective. Because if it's the most powerful, cool weapon in the game, why would you only let players use it once in a while? It leads to this really bad habit of too good to use syndrome, and this is something I suffer from a lot. If something is really powerful but it has a limited amount of uses, I just won't want to use it until it's like literally the final boss fight. And sometimes that's a really bad idea. Like, there's a lot of the legendary weapons that you should be using during the final boss fights, but some of them, no. Like, you need to use them in the harder fights that are preceding that. And maybe the final boss is actually a pushover. I don't know. Depends on the game. So, my problem with it is that the limited uses were a real dumb way of going about things. Some games did this better, like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn had Ragnell. It had infinite uses, and that was really smart, but it had one huge problem, and that problem was the fact that Ragnell, once you got it, was undoubtedly the best weapon I could ever wield past that point. There's no reason why I would ever use anything else, because it was really strong, it was accurate, and it had a freaking 1-2 hit rate. You could attack from range with it. It was like a ranged weapon and a melee weapon, and it did a lot of damage, and it had unlimited uses. There was just no reason to ever use anything else, which, actually is bad, to be honest. Like, you should still have to make important, interesting decisions. So, I don't know how they'll handle legendary weapons and fates, but the fact that they're taking away durability in general means that I won't have to worry about not using these weapons until literally the end of the game, because that's what I'll do every time, and it makes me sad. So overall, guys, this was just a quick not really quick, it was a 13-minute video, but a little look at what I believe to be how the durability system has evolved over the course of the series, and how I think it actually might be at its best in Fire Emblem Fates. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about this in the comments below. Also, tell me what you want me to do. I'd like to do a few more little talks like this about various elements of the Fire Emblem series, and then probably talking about Fire Emblem Fates itself, maybe a character guide or something like that. Just let me know. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.